Zhuo Fan stood before the men hunting the Luo hares, then offered to betray the very family he had just saved. Sun Guanjia believed fear had finally broken the servant. But every step of that deal was leading the entire group towards a road from which no living man would return. Only moments earlier, the misty forest had seemed like the last refuge of the ruined Luo clan. Luo Yunshang and Luo Yunhai were concealed beyond the thick fog, while Commander Pang had fallen into enemy hands. Sun Guanjia and his men believed the chase was nearly over. Their prisoners were exhausted, their targets had nowhere else to run, and the single servant standing before them appeared too weak to change anything. One impatient fighter raised his weapon and rushed forward, eager to remove the final obstacle. Zhuo Fan did not retreat. His expression remained calm as the blade approached. At the last possible instant, his voice cut through the tension. He ordered the man to stop, not with panic, but with the confidence of someone who had already decided how the encounter would end. The sudden interruption caught everyone by surprise. Zhuo Fan had no army behind him, no visible escape route, and no strength that Sun Guanjia considered dangerous. Yet the servant spoke as if he held the advantage. He announced that Luo Yunshang and Luo Yunhai had already been paralyzed, and that both heirs were now completely under his control. The claim immediately changed the atmosphere. The fighters lowered their weapons slightly, while Sun Guanjia studied Zhuo Fan with renewed interest. If the servant was telling the truth, the long pursuit could end without another search through the fog. If the claim was a lie, killing him would require only a moment. Either way, Sun Guanjia had nothing to lose by listening. Zhuo Fan then proposed a deal. He would hand over both Luo hares, but Sun Guanjia had to guarantee him a secure future. The request sounded shameless, especially from a servant whose duty was to protect the Luo family. Even Sun Guanjia appeared surprised by the speed of the trail. Commander Pang reacted with far greater fury. Restrained among the enemy fighters, he stared at Zhuo Fan as though the servant had become something more hateful than any bandit. The Luo household had trusted him. Luo Yunshang had defended him. Luo Yunhai had followed him into the forest. Now, at the first sign of danger, he seemed ready to exchange their lives for personal safety. Sun Guanjia did not accept the offer immediately. A man willing to betray one master could betray another just as easily. He demanded to know why Zhuo Fan had abandoned the Luo family after risking so much to keep the hares alive. The question was sensible, and Zhuo Fan answered without hesitation. He explained that a person could not continue destroying himself for a hopeless cause. The Luo family had already been defeated. Its manor was lost, its guards were dead, and its surviving hares were being hunted. A single servant could never rebuild such a household through loyalty alone. Exchanging two doomed lives for a better future was not cruelty in his explanation, it was common sense. The reasoning was cold enough to sound genuine. Zhuo Fan even asked why any rational man would choose death when survival remained available. Sun Guanjia listened closely, searching for fear, guilt, or uncertainty. None appeared. Zhuo Fan spoke like someone who had finally accepted the collapse of his old life. That apparent selfishness made the story believable. Greed could be understood. Cowardice could be controlled. A loyal servant might create trouble, but a traitor seeking protection could be useful. Sun Guanjia slowly began to consider the agreement, while his men relaxed around their seemingly helpless guide. Zhuo Fan provided another detail to strengthen the deception. The two hares were hidden at one end of a rope inside the misty forest. The route twisted repeatedly between trees, rocks, and heavy banks of fog. Only he could distinguish the correct path. To make the journey safer, he had tied a red rope along the route. It served as a marker leading towards the Luo siblings, and it would also guide the group back after the capture. Without that line, anyone entering too deeply could wander until exhaustion or madness claimed them. The explanation suited the forest perfectly. Even experienced fighters could lose direction once the mist swallowed familiar landmarks. Sun Guanjia smiled. A marked route removed the greatest danger, and Zhuo Fan had apparently prepared every detail for him. The idea was clever enough to be convincing, but not so extraordinary that it exposed the trap. Sun Guanjia agreed to the deal, then warned the servant against lying. Zhuo Fan answered with deliberate honesty. He stated openly that he did not trust Sun Guanjia at all. That blunt confession produced laughter among the fighters. It sounded almost foolish, yet it made the betrayal appear even more sincere. A frightened servant would naturally distrust armed pursuers. By admitting that fear, Zhuo Fan made every other lie easier to believe. Sun Guanjia ordered him to lead the way. The group formed around Zhuo Fan, with armed fighters on every side and Commander Pang dragged behind them. The red rope stretched through the trees like a thin trail of blood. Zhuo Fan followed it without hesitation, stepping around hidden roots and turning whenever the mist concealed another narrow passage. Sun Guanjia remained close enough to strike at the first suspicious movement. Several men watched the rope, while others watched the servant. They believed caution had protected them from deception. In reality, every guard, every weapon, and every suspicious eye had already been included in Zhuo Fan's calculations. Commander Pang could no longer remain silent. He cursed Zhuo Fan as a faithless dog who had betrayed the young master. He shouted that the Luo family had placed its trust in the wrong man, and that such treachery would follow the servant for the rest of his life. His anger then turned towards Sun Guanjia, whom he condemned with equal force. Even death could not silence his loyalty. If his body fell in that forest, his hatred would still pursue the men responsible. The fighters laughed at his defiance, but Zhuo Fan gave no response. Not a glance, not a warning, not even a sign of regret crossed his face. That silence cut Commander Pang more deeply than mockery. The commander had believed Zhuo Fan possessed courage beneath his strange behavior. During the escape, the servant had displayed knowledge, composure, and an unexpected willingness to stand before danger. For a brief time, Commander Pang had thought the Luo family might still possess one loyal man capable of protecting its heirs. Now that hope appeared foolish. Every step along the red rope seemed to carry Luo Yunshang and Luo Yunhai closer to capture. Commander Pang struggled against his restraints, but several fighters held him firmly. With no strength left to resist, he could only watch Zhuo Fan lead the enemy forward. The journey continued until the ordinary colors of the forest disappeared. Pale fog pressed between the trees, muffling footsteps and swallowing distant voices. The red rope remained the only clear object in sight. It curved around ancient trunks, crossed patches of wet ground, and vanished repeatedly into the haze. Sun Guanjia followed with growing impatience. The promised captives had not appeared, and the path seemed much longer than expected. Still, the rope proved that someone had prepared the route. Its presence reassured him whenever suspicion returned. A visible trail felt safer than instinct, and Zhuo Fan understood exactly how much confidence a simple object could create. At last, Zhuo Fan stopped. The fighters immediately tightened their formation. Sun Guanjia asked whether the heirs were nearby, but the servant did not point towards any hiding place. Instead, Zhuo Fan slowly turned to face the group. The obedient expression disappeared. In its place came the cold composure of a man standing before condemned prisoners. He announced that the path had reached Huangquan Road, the road leading to the underworld. This was not the place where Luo Yunshang and Luo Yunhai waited to be captured. It was the place where Sun Guanjia and every man beside him would die. For one heartbeat, disbelief held the group still. Then rage exploded. The fighter nearest Zhuo Fan lunged forward, determined to cut him down before another trick could begin. His weapon crossed the space between them with murderous speed. Zhuo Fan moved first. One sharp motion severed the red rope, destroying the trail that had guided everyone into the fog. The mist shifted at the same instant. His figure blurred, then vanished between the trees as though the forest itself had swallowed him. The attack struck empty air. When the fighters turned towards Commander Pang, the prisoner had vanished as well. Confusion spread through the group. Several men searched the surrounding ground, while others grabbed the broken ends of the rope. Nothing remained to show which direction led back. Sun Guanjia stared at the severed line and finally understood the scale of the deception. Zhuo Fan had never intended to surrender the Luo heirs. The rope had not been created to lead the hunters safely through the forest. It had been bait, designed to pull them beyond every familiar landmark and gather them in a location chosen in advance. Even Commander Pang's capture had become useful. While the group focused on Zhuo Fan, the formation had removed the prisoner from their reach. Sun Guanjia's face twisted with fury. He cursed the servant for making a fool of him, then shouted that no ordinary mist could keep trained fighters trapped forever. The forest had trees, slopes, and a limited boundary. If the men stayed together and chose one direction, escape should eventually follow. He promised that Zhuo Fan would be hunted down and killed once the group found a path outside. The threat echoed through the haze, but no answer came from the surrounding darkness. Only a distant laugh drifted between the trunks, calm, faint, and filled with absolute certainty. Zhuo Fan finally replied from somewhere beyond sight. Sun Guanjia would never receive another chance to kill him. Before anyone could locate the voice, the fog began to change. The pale mist darkened, as if blood were spreading through water. Red light seeped across the ground and climbed the trees. Shadows stretched in impossible directions. The temperature fell, and the familiar forest sounds disappeared. No birds called above the branches. No insects moved beneath the leaves. Even the wind seemed afraid to enter the area. The fighters raised their weapons, but steel offered little comfort against an enemy with no visible body. One man standing near the edge of the group glanced away for only a moment. When another fighter looked back, that man was gone. No scream had warned the others. No body lay on the ground. The fog simply occupied the place where a living person had stood. Panic rose instantly. The remaining men called out, demanding an answer, yet the missing fighter never replied. Another shadow moved between the trees. A second man disappeared, then a third. Each loss happened faster than the group could react, and every attempt to close their formation only made the surrounding red mist feel tighter. Sun Guanjia tried to restore order. He commanded the men to remain close and watch every direction. The instruction failed because the formation had already begun twisting their senses. A voice that sounded nearby came from far away. Footsteps behind one tree appeared beside another. Companions standing only a few paces apart looked like distant silhouettes. When the fighters reached for one another, the fog placed empty space between their hands. The forest had become a shifting prison, and distance no longer obeyed ordinary rules. Sun Guanjia could no longer tell whether his men were being dragged away, or whether the formation was moving the ground beneath them. The truth struck him with terrifying force. This was not natural fog. It was an array formation. Hidden lines of power crossed beneath the soil, connected to the stones and markings Zhuo Fan had prepared earlier. The entire section of forest had been transformed into a weapon. Such methods were rare, expensive, and normally controlled by powerful families or sects. Yet a servant from a ruined household had constructed one with almost nothing. That contradiction frightened Sun Guanjia more than the red mist. Zhuo Fan was not merely clever. He possessed knowledge that should never have belonged to someone of his status. Far from the trapped fighters, the missing Commander Pang opened his eyes among the Luo siblings. The formation had carried him away from the enemy and returned him to safety without allowing Sun Guanjia to follow. Luo Yunshang remained near the center of the array, while Luo Yunhai stayed close behind her. Commander Pang struggled to understand what had happened. Moments earlier, he had been a helpless prisoner, certain that Zhuo Fan had sold the entire family. Now the red fog separated the hares from their pursuers, and the supposed traitor stood calmly beside them. The explanation became clear. Zhuo Fan's betrayal had been a performance from the beginning. His cold words had drawn suspicion away from the hidden hares. The red rope had persuaded the enemy to enter willingly. Commander Pang's furious curses had made the deception even stronger, because no captured loyalist would defend a false traitor so convincingly. Zhuo Fan had used the commander's genuine hatred as part of the trap, without revealing enough to endanger the plan. Commander Pang could only stare. Relief mixed with embarrassment, yet there was no time for an apology. Sun Guanjia and the remaining fighters were still alive inside the formation. Luo Yunshang asked what would happen next. Zhuo Fan answered that the next step required her help. The statement surprised her. She had watched the mist obey him, seen Commander Pang rescued, and felt the spiritual energy gathering beneath the ground. A cultivator with such control seemed unlikely to need assistance from someone who had never commanded an array. Zhuo Fan offered no long explanation. He guided her towards the center, where faint symbols glowed beneath the grass. The formation was ready, but its killing power still needed a visible controller. Luo Yunshang would provide that command. When Zhuo Fan reached for her arm, Luo Yunshang recoiled in confusion. His manner remained direct and practical. He told her not to move, then placed her hand in the proper position above the glowing pattern. One of his hands steadied her wrist, while the other guided the flow of energy through the array. The closeness made her tense, but any protest vanished when spiritual power surged from the ground. Warm light spread beneath her fingers. The symbols widened into circles, and streams of energy rushed through her body without causing harm. For the first time, she could feel the misty forest as something larger than trees and fog. Every hidden line of the 9 Serenities Ghost Gate formation appeared within her awareness. The sensation was overwhelming. She sensed the red mist moving through distant passages, the trapped fighters stumbling across false paths, and the spiritual stones feeding power into the array. The formation seemed alive. Countless currents crossed one another, yet Zhuo Fan's guidance kept them from becoming chaos. Luo Yunshang realized that a slight movement of her hand could redirect the fog. A change in focus could open one path and close another. With a single command, the shadows surrounding Sun Guanjia's men could become executioners. The power felt extraordinary. Luo Yunshang had spent her life believing strength came from cultivation, martial techniques, and inherited resources. The formation revealed another path. It gathered energy from the forest and placed that power into the hands of its controller. Even someone unable to defeat the pursuers in direct combat could now threaten the entire group. Zhuo Fan stood behind her, supplying knowledge and stability, but the final decision belonged to Luo Yunshang. The enemies inside had attacked her home, slaughtered the Luo guards, captured Commander Pang, and hunted Luo Yunhai without mercy. Allowing them to leave would invite another pursuit. Her hesitation disappeared. Luo Yunshang focused on the red mist, followed Zhuo Fan's instructions, and gave the order to kill. The glowing symbols erupted with golden light. Rings of ancient markings expanded across the ground, illuminating roots, stones, and broken branches. At the center of that brilliance, darkness gathered into unnatural shapes. Long, jagged silhouettes rose from the formation like spirits climbing through a gate. Their bodies possessed no flesh, yet their limbs carried a cold green light. The Nine Serenities Ghost Gate formation had stopped hiding its purpose. The prison was now a slaughterhouse. Inside the red fog, the remaining fighters saw the shadows approaching. One man swung his weapon, but the blade passed through empty darkness. A black limb appeared behind him, glowing with green energy, and struck before he could turn. His scream vanished almost as quickly as his body. Another fighter tried to run. The forest stretched before him, repeating the same trees no matter how far he moved. When he looked back, a ghostly shape was already at his shoulder. The formation attacked from every direction, giving its victims neither a clear target nor a path of retreat. Terror destroyed the last traces of discipline. The men shouted that ghosts had entered the forest. They separated, collided, and attacked shadows that belonged to their own companions. Some attempted to climb trees, only to discover that the branches dissolved into mist beneath their hands. Others followed voices promising an exit, then disappeared into deeper darkness. Every instinct worked against them. Speed carried them farther into the trap. Strength wasted energy on illusions. Fear made their spiritual power easier for the formation to seize. Zhuo Fan had chosen an array designed not only to kill bodies, but to break minds first. Sun Guanjia fought to resist the same terror. He watched one subordinate collapse after green energy burst from the man's mouth, and another was hurled across the ground and left motionless among the roots. The commander of the pursuers tried to locate the core of the array, knowing every formation required a center. If that point could be destroyed, the mist might lose its power, yet the red fog concealed all spiritual patterns from him. False currents appeared wherever he searched, while the real structure remained beyond reach. Zhuo Fan's knowledge made even the weaknesses of the formation part of its deception. One surviving fighter rushed towards Sun Guanjia, pleading for protection. A black arm shot from the fog and seized the man before he arrived. Sun Guanjia reached forward, but his fingers closed on nothing. The shadow dragged the fighter backwards, and a stream of green light escaped from the victim's mouth. His body fell empty while the darkness withdrew into the mist. Sun Guanjia finally stood almost alone. The group that had entered the forest with confidence had been reduced to scattered corpses and fading screams. The red rope, once treated as a guarantee of safety, lay severed somewhere beyond sight. Desperation forced Sun Guanjia into motion. He released his remaining power and struck at the approaching shadows. One attack tore through a ghostly limb, scattering it into green sparks. For an instant, hope returned. Then the scattered darkness gathered again behind him. The formation did not depend on a single creature. Every shadow was only an extension of the power beneath the forest. Destroying one shape accomplished nothing while the array remained active. Sun Guanjia turned, blocked another strike, and ran through a gap before the mist could close. The escape attempt carried him towards a faint silhouette. Believing he had found another survivor, Sun Guanjia rushed forward. The figure did not call for help. It waited in silence until he came close, then moved with sudden speed. A hand caught him before he could change direction. Pain tore through his body. Sun Guanjia crashed to the ground, blood staining the grass beneath him. The red mist thinned just enough to reveal Zhuo Fan standing nearby. No fear remained on the servant's face. There was only the same cold certainty that had appeared when Huangquan Road was revealed. Sun Guanjia struggled to lift his head. Rage remained, but confidence had vanished. He could no longer understand the man before him. Zhuo Fan had deceived trained fighters, constructed a rare formation, rescued a prisoner from the center of an armed group, and turned Luo Yunshang into the array's controller. None of those feats belonged to an ordinary servant. With his strength fading, Sun Guanjia demanded to know Zhuo Fan's true identity. The question carried more than curiosity. It was the final plea of a dying man who needed the nightmare to make sense. Zhuo Fan offered name beyond the one already known. Explaining the past would have been meaningless to a man with only seconds remaining. His former life, the Magic Emperor's knowledge, and the Nine Serenities' secret records were secrets far beyond Sun Guanjia's reach. Zhuo Fan stepped closer as the final shadows behind him. Then he delivered the only answer his enemy would receive. Sun Guanjia could go to hell and ask the Hell King. The last strike ended the pursuit. Sun Guanjia fell, and the red mist swallowed the final traces of resistance. Across the forest, the screams stopped one by one. Weapons rested beside bodies that would never rise again. The ghostly limbs withdrew into the glowing symbols, while the golden circles beneath Luo Yunshang slowly faded. Silence returned, but it was no longer the peaceful silence of an untouched forest. It was the stillness left behind after a perfect execution. Commander Pang had entered the trap believing Zhuo Fan was the Luo family's greatest disgrace. He now understood that the servant had saved every surviving member of the household through a plan no ordinary commander could have created. Luo Yunshang had felt the formation's power flow through her own hands. Luo Yunhai had watched the enemy disappear without reaching him. None of them could continue treating Zhuo Fan as the weak servant they once knew. Gratitude remained, but so did a question that grew more dangerous with every impossible achievement. The Luo family had survived another night, yet survival now depended on a man surrounded by secrets. Zhuo Fan had fooled Sun Guanjia, controlled the misty forest, and opened a gate that seemed to lead directly into the underworld. His enemies were dead, but the display had revealed only a fraction of what he remembered from his former life. As the final red light faded between the trees, one truth became impossible to ignore. The ruined Luo clan had not merely gained a clever servant, it had unknowingly placed its future in the hands of the